Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Good morning to one and all, and welcome back to the second part of this weekend's Weekend with Wisdom with Swami Tattvamayananda ji. And he has been giving a very enlightening introduction to Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and he will continue with this exposition today as well. Very warm welcome to you, Swamiji. Thank you for coming and um, being part of this initiative. So, if there are any questions, please put your questions in the question and answer box. And at the end, last 10 minutes, Swamiji will take up these questions. Swamiji, you can start your session now. At the last 10 minutes, we'll dedicate to question and answer.
योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि स्तुवे पतञ्जलिं व्यासं शङ्करं च मुनित्रयं कर्तृसूत्रस्य भाष्यस्य क्रमात् विवरणस्य च. So this is the second session of this Yoga Sutra retreat. So I shall begin with giving an answer to somebody who raised a question in the last session, but we could not answer because there was not enough time. So somebody asked this question about what is Abhinivesha, it was written there. So Abhinivesha is one of the Panchakleshas, Avidya, Asmita, Raga, Dvesha, Abhinivesha. We already discussed the other four kleshas. Kleshas are some kind of samskaras. There are two types of samskaras that we normally generate through our actions and experiences. One is called klesha samskaras, the other one is called karmashaya samskaras. Klesha samskaras normally are the tendencies generated by actions and experiences in this life, and we will be influenced in our actions and life activities by those klesha samskaras in this life itself. So we already discussed this earlier. The two most potent samskaras, klesha samskaras, raga and dvesha. Extreme liking for certain things, kind of obsessive attachment to certain things that we may know in our mind that it's not good. We may want to get out of this extreme obsessive attachment, but we cannot get out of it. Some of the problems in a Brahma psychology, like obsessions, obsessive habits, and certain tendency, like for example, you want to wash your hands again and again, irrational fears, all this could be related to klesha samskaras, obsessive habits. And so raga and dvesha, extreme liking for certain things, extreme dislike for certain things. It's all because of our ignorance of our true nature, avidya, and as a result of it, we identify ourselves with this body-mind complex, that is asmita, and raga dvesha comes. Extreme liking is raga, extreme dislike is dvesha. Abhinivesha is clinging to life. So somehow thinking and feeling that we should, well, this life is eternal, this physical life is eternal, so at any cost, we must cling to this life. It's called Abhinivesha. So as I mentioned, there are two types of samskaras. Ordinary samskaras operating in this present life itself. Raga, dvesha, and all these panchaklesha related samskaras, normal samskaras normally operate in this life, and we often uh, we are influenced in our actions and behavior patterns and habits by these samskaras. So please remember what is samskara. Samskara is related to Patanjali's analysis of karma vritti samskara chakram, so to speak. To be more accurate to say, these ideas, many of these ideas were projected and emphasized by Vyasa in his commentary on Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So Patanjali doesn't directly elaborate on these points. So whenever we do something or whenever we experience something consciously, that experience or that activity that we undertake will leave behind a residual effect which is called vritti, and such repeated experiences will generate and more such vrittis, and they will become strengthened and they become one unit. It becomes a samskara, a tendency, and it becomes a tendency towards one particular kind of action, vasanas, and sometimes they lead to our sankalpas, our thought world, our attitudes, and they may again influence our future activities, either in the form of extreme liking. If the experience that we have undergone is a happy experience, we may repeat those actions. If it is an unhappy experience, we may avoid those actions. So many of these samskaras, ordinary samskaras, when they are superficial, they normally influence our activities in this life itself. But Yoga Sutra, like Vedanta, Buddhism, Jainism, and other Oriental religious traditions, believe in the law of karma and the doctrine of reincarnation, so to speak, mean rebirth. So there is another kind of samskara, it's called karmasya samskaras. They are deeper layers of samskaras, which constitute what could be called karmic residue. And they actually influence our character, our mental constitution, and also our attitudes for several generations. They're called karmasya samskaras. They continue influencing our actions and behavior patterns. So many of our fascination for spiritual ideas, for example, could be rooted in our ancient connection with these ideas, either by reading, by associating, or by spiritual practices. So also certain inexplicable habits and tendencies which cannot be explained in the light of our previous experiences can be rooted in karmasya samskaras. You can find this frequently happening. Certain samskaras and vasanas found among children. Children who display a unique and a very profound tendency for music may be born in a family without any musical tradition, but they will display a strong tendency to practice or to learn music, and they are able to do it with extraordinary ease and without any effort. There is no logical explanation for such even happenings, because their parents were perhaps they had nothing to do with the music, and they had never practiced any music. So the child may not have had any opportunity to listen to music, and in the whole family there was absolutely nothing like a musical tradition. But still, you find in some families children displaying extraordinary, very strong tendencies for music. Like that, any such aberrations, normally what we call aberrations. So these are all examples of the influence of karmasya samskaras. So we have to remember in some of the discussions that we are going to do today, this particular point should be kept in mind. I mean, these two types of samskaras, what is klishta samskaras, we called samskaras directly related to kleshas. which are normally ordinary samskaras, which influence our actions only in this life. And then karmasya samskaras, which are samskaras which lie at a much deeper layers of the mental system, which continue influencing our life for several generations. Our life cycles, endless life cycles, could be influenced by these karmasya samskaras. Now, there is an interesting verse in this interesting sutra. Swarasavahi vidushopi tatharudho abhiniveshika. There is an interesting. This, I mean, what this means is the kleshas, which is based on this continuous, ever-flowing momentum of samskaras, which are deep-rooted in our life system, they are linked to abhinivesha. So abhinivesha is an ever-permanent, ever-present mental tendency. Abhinivesha. Raga and dvesha are related to certain events. So we may have an extreme raga, attachment, desire, extreme fascination, infatuation to certain things, totally irrational, but that is only in the context of certain events or certain persons or certain tendencies. Dvesha also similarly, extreme dislike, extreme aversion to certain things, which may be totally irrational. That is another example of samskaras which are contextual, which are related to certain context. But abhinivesha is common and widespread. I mean, the natural tendency to cling to life at any cost. That's because people do not know, people do not remember that the present life is only a part of the continuous and moving, continuing cycle of birth, life, death, and rebirth. So Vedanta strongly emphasizes this point, just like Yoga Shastra. That is, karma, our actions and activities producing vrittis, vrittis becoming samskaras, samskaras becoming vasanas, and vasanas becoming sankalpas, and sankalpa related, leading to further actions, like that. So Patanjali says, te pradiprasavaheyaha sukshmaha. So many of these kleshas, many of these tendencies which cause our mental constitution can be eradicated only through pradiprasava is a word used here. Pradiprasava means counter evolution. As I mentioned yesterday, Patanjali's system, yoga system, completely adopts the philosophical system of Sankhya. In Sankhya system, the whole universe, including our body, our mind, our intellect, our ego system, and our senses, and this phenomenal world, empirical world, they all constitute different evolutes of Prakriti. So for Prakriti, this constant evolution is taking place. That is, from subtle to gross. So the movement from subtle, from karana, from cause to effect is called evolution. And the counter movement from effect to cause, it is called counter evolution. So the pratiprasava is the term used by Patanjali. So through yoga practice, through the practice of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, aided at different stages by Kriya Yoga and so on. Kriya Yoga means tapaswadhyaya isar pranidhananani Kriya Yoga. That is Patanjali's definition. Through these practices, we go back to our original cause, Prakriti. This is the view of Patanjali. Remember, this part of Patanjala philosophy is not acceptable to Vedantins. But Vedantins fully accept and fully appreciate Patanjali's analysis of human mind and this analysis of vrittis, vasanas, samskaras, all that. Of course, it Vyasa who elaborated this in his commentary. All these are acceptable and accepted to Vedanta, but not this concept of Prakriti, Purusha, etc. But anyway, to give the complete picture of the process from Patanjali's own perspective, when we practice spirituality, meditation, etc., we actually get back to our original cause. So first we understand the empirical nature of external world, then we understand, we practice pratyahara, and through pratyahara, of course, gradually through dharana and dhyana, we eventually understand our true nature and we understand our identity with Purusha. This is Patanjali's system. So this kind of going back to cause is called Pratiprasava. So all the kleshas, they originate as part of evolution from Prakriti to Mahatattva, Ahankara, gradually in a descending order, and from Ahankara, Panchatanmatras, and from Panchatanmatras to Panchamahabhutas, it coming down in a descending order is called evolution. From this, we go back to our original cause, that is called Pratiprasava. So kleshas originate as part of this process of evolution, and these kleshas can be eradicated only through counter evolution by going back to the original cause. Another sutra says, Klesha Mulaha Karmasyo Dushta Adushta Janma Vedaniyaha. The residue of this karma with kleshas as root cause is to be experienced either in this life or in a life to come. This is a very important point, remember. Of course, it is accepted in all systems of theistic Indian philosophy. So Naiyayikas and Vaisheshikas and Sankhya, Yoga, Purvamimamsa, Uttaramimamsa, they all accept this principle. That is, the samskaras, klesha samskaras, generated by our actions, will always have to be experienced. So, and not only in this life, but next life also. So that's why drishta and adrishta, either in this life or next life. If a person has done something, if the action is done with full awareness, kartrutva and bhoktrutva, I'm doing this, and I'm the one who is going to be associated with the enjoyment, the results of all this. So this full kartrutva and bhoktrutva. So that action will produce a karmic residue, and that karmic residue is called vritti, and that vritti can become a samskara, and once it becomes a samskara, it becomes karmasya samskara, and it gets stored up in our system, mental system. If we experience the consequences of those events in this life itself, then it is worked out. But certain tendencies and impressions go deeper and may not be worked out in one's life, then they are transmitted from life cycle to life cycle. It is not so obvious. So frequently our experiences in our life can be explained in the light of this karmasaya concept. That's only logical explanation. Sometimes you find some people who are living good life, they have to face through some challenges. So if you believe in the doctrine of karma and doctrine of rebirth, then you get an explanation. But if you believe only in the doctrine of karma without taking into consideration the doctrine of rebirth and the transmission of karmas, samskaras from life cycle to life cycle, you cannot get a logical explanation for this paradox of good people going through a lot of difficulties and bad people having a good time all the time. So yoga system explains this. I want to emphasize again, this is accepted not only in yoga philosophy, but in all the theistic systems of Indian philosophy. That is, the Yayigas and Vaisheshikas, Sankhya and Yoga and Mimamsa and Vedanta. They all accept these fundamental principles. And also in the Buddhist and Jaina systems also, these ideas are more or less accepted. And Buddhists also believe in the concept of Praditya Samutpada, their dependent origination. Trishna or desire becoming the root cause of continued life cycle. I mean, going through this rotating wheel of life, death, rebirth, and again the rotating wheel continues until you practice these eightfold disciplines and finally attain nirvana. This is a Buddhist view. So Jainas also believe in the doctrine of karma. So here Patanjali says, Klesha Mulaha Karma Sayu Drishta Adrishta Janma Vedaniyaha. So this the latent deposit or residue of karma, the karma leaving its mark in our life, with kleshas, which actually klesha is the root cause of this, it's called klesha mula. It should be experienced in this life or next life. So karmasya can be considered to be the sum total, the totality of all residual effects of our actions. So what is karmasya? Karmasya constitutes a repository of all the vrittis and vasanas and samskaras related to our actions which remain in the system. So they continue influencing our life cycles from one life to another life. So that I think that this explains some of the mysteries in modern life. You know, you can find people like Edgar Cayce and some I don't know what to call them. Maybe they are not fully accepted by mainstream psychologists or the fraternity of modern psychologists, but still some of them have tried to throw light into the influence of karma and its effect on our actions and continued life cycles. Anyway, so now next, Satimule Tadvibago Jatya Ayun Bhoga. Now again, if the root cause, that is some klesha is there, then fruition of that karma say in the form of birth, life, that is an important sutra which explains the connection between karmasya, that is samskaras of our actions, and the continued cycle of our life. That's why you find in the Gita, there's a very well-known verse, Antakale Smaranvabi Bhajat. So there is a Antakale Kalevaram Tejat Yandi. This sloka is there with Ramanuja's commentary. He says, you know, Yam Vapi Smaran Bhavam Tejat Yande Kalevaram Tam Tame Vaidi Kaundeya Sandamam Bhava Bhavitaha. It's a Gita sloka. Yam Vapi Smaran Bhavam Tejat Yande Kalevaram. What are your thoughts in your mind when you die? that influence, that design, that determine and define your next life. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajati ante kalebaram. What you focus on, what you remember, what you meditate upon at the time of death when you leave this body. Tam tameva iti kaunteya. Tam tameva iti kaunteya. Lord Krishna says in the Gita, that particular bhava you will get, you will inherit in your next life. So Ramanuja's commentary says, Ante antakale yam yam va api bhavam smaran kalebaram tyajati tam tam bhavam eva marananta yedi antapratyascha purabhavida vishayaha jayate. So you can find, of course, some of the scholars in the Ramanuja and Madhva tradition give the example. So Vallabhacharya, they all give a lot of importance to this, the Vaishnava Bhakti schools of philosophy, Vallabha, Nimbarka, Ramanuja, and others. So they try to explain this in the light of, by referring to certain Upakhyanas in the Bhagavata Purana, Ajamila Upakhyana, Parikshit, and so on. So that's very emphatic in the context of Patanjali Sutra, Satimule Tad Vipago Jati Ayurbhoga. That means if kleshas are there, then the fruition of that karmasya, klesha and samskaras will have to take place, and the fruition, I mean the manifestation of those samskaras may be extended to several life cycles. You can find this in the light of an interesting context in the Gita itself. In the 6th chapter, Arjuna is asking one question, a very important question. He says, Ayati Siddhayo Pedo Yoga Chalita Manasaha Aprapi Yoga Samsiddhim Kam Gatim Krishna Gechati. So, in the 6th chapter, that means Arjuna had already listened to the entire 2nd chapter, which contains a synopsis of jnana, bhakti, karma, everything. And the 3rd chapter, which is exclusively devoted to karma yoga. And 4th chapter and 5th chapter are all very, very important because they all relate to your Tyaga, karma yoga, jnanam, bhakti, all. Then in the 6th chapter, Arjuna is asking one very interesting question. Suppose Ayadi Siddhayo Pedo, a person who has got a lot of sincerity, a true spiritual seeker, a true spiritual aspirant, but is Ayati. He has not fully achieved sense control, self-restraint. He has not fully reached and not attained the highest spiritual enlightenment. But he is Shraddhayo Veda. He has got a lot of Shraddha, he is sincere, he is honest. Aprapya Yoga Samsiddhim Kam Gadim Krishna Gechati. Suppose that person dies or has a deviation from his spiritual path, and then he dies before realizing, reaching the highest spiritual goal. Lord Krishna's answer in a way is an elaborate exposition of Patanjali's concept mentioned here in this particular sutra. That is, Satimuli Tad Vipako Jati Ayurbhoga, which actually unlocks the mystery, decodes the mystery of actions and their impact on our experiences continued over several life cycles. So Lord Krishna's answer is, Partha Naiveha Namutra Vinasas Tasya Vidyade Nahi Kalyana Krita Kaschid Durgatim Tata Gechati. So Lord Krishna tells Arjuna, Partha Naiva Na Eva Iha, neither Iha nor Amutra. No. He says, the effect of your good actions will not be lost in this life or next life, Parthanaiveha namutra vinashaha. Na vinashaha. Ihava mutra. Whatever spiritual practices you have done in this life, their results will not be destroyed either in this life or next life. Nahi kalyanakrit kaschid. Any person who is a kalyanakrit, somebody who is doing kalyanam in mangalagaram, somebody who is doing anything that is auspicious. Even if you meditate just for a few days in your life, or if you help a few persons in your life, even if you try to listen to spiritual talks and try to do manana, sravana, manana, nididhyasana with a lot of concentration and sincerity and sattha, then these actions will produce a spiritual deposit, spiritual wealth in your system. And when you are born again, you will be born with this spiritual inheritance, these samskaras. So these samskaras will not die. What happens is, with our physical body, mind and senses, we may do things, and those senses, panchajnanendriyas, karmendriyas, the external organs of eyes or ears or hands, all the karmendriya, jnanendriya, their sthula aspects will disappear with the body when a person dies. But whatever samskaras a person has generated or created using those senses will be stored up in the mental system, and when he is born, he will inherit this spiritual wealth. He'll be born with a bag which is full of this karma samskaras, using Patanjali's own term. And what happens then? Tatradam buddhi samyogam labhade paurodekigam yatadeja tato bhuya samsiddho kurunandana. In the 6th chapter of the Gita, Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna continues, Tatradam buddhi samyogam labhade paurodekigam. So paurodekigam buddhi samyogam, what happens is, when you are born again with these karma samskaras, you will reconnect with those samskaras when you get an option or a situation or an opportunity to connect with any event or a person or an episode that has something to do with those samskaras which you have already accumulated in your system. Suppose you have done meditation, the person has done a lot of meditation, lot of sadhanas. If that person dies away, if he dies out without and before reaching spiritual liberation, he'll be born again, he may go to library, and if he reads a book on the Gita or Upanishads or any spiritual literature, suddenly he will feel a strange fascination for those ideas. That's what happens. So you find Paul Brunton hearing and coming to know about India's spiritual tradition, goes all the way to India to meet Ramana Maharshi. You find, and going there and becoming his great admirer and spending a lot of time in the with Ramana Maharshi's ashram. So how do you explain this? Suddenly he heard about it and he felt a strange connection. Or Ramana Maharshi himself, when the event of his father's death, normally it will frighten a person, it will be a scary event for many people, it may cripple people's minds, but in Ramana Maharshi's case, he just opened a new door and he immediately connected with the transcendental deathless Atman when he thought about the mystery of his own father's death. So it all explains what happened. Tatradam buddhi samyogam labhade paurodehikam. Those who have done a lot of spiritual practices and then die before and without reaching their goal, their spiritual practices will not be lost because they constitute a spiritual inheritance, spiritual wealth which is deposited in their name. They're born again, they will automatically connect with their own spiritual past whenever an occurrence happens. So an event takes place. Ajahn Vila Vakyanam is frequently quoted. They explain the same reality in the bhakti circles. which actually emphasizes Patanjali's concept. So Ajamila was born, you find Ajamila Vakhyana in the Srimad Bhagavata Purana. So Ajamila was brought up as a God-fearing young person. Then he had a deviation from his spiritual disciplines, and he became completely lost and led a very wayward life, indisciplined life, and then he became a scourge to his parents, whom he ill-treated. And eventually, at the time of death, he was rejected by all. And then, in total helplessness, he just called out the name of his son, whose name was Narayana. So immediately, Ajamila suddenly remembered that was the very holy name he was uttering when he was a little boy growing up in his parents' home as a God-fearing boy. At that time, he was a devotee when he was very small. This part is not frequently mentioned in the Bhagavata Purana text, Vyasa's text, but this is indicated in some of the Tikas. And then when Vishnu's servants came to take his soul, Ajamila went to Vishnu Loka. Before that, Yama's servants came to take him to hell. And the Vishnu's servants came, there is a dialogue and conflict of opinions among them, and then Vishnu Dutas convinced Yamadutas that this man has uttered the name of the Lord at the time of death, so he deserves to go to Vishnu Loka. You find the stories. Of course, the stories are significant only because there's a story behind the story. There's a message, a spiritual message behind the story. In fact, Vyasa himself says stories are meant to drive home a spiritual message. So you can find this happening. That is Satimuli Tadvibhago Jatyayur Bhoga. In this context, of course, there is another very important subject to be discussed here. That is in the So that shows the unique contributions of Patanjali system towards decoding the mysteries of human mind. Especially these two concepts which are unique, which in a way were elaborated by Vyasa in his commentary. One is Karmasya concept. Karmasya is a repository of different layers of effects or influences of our actions and activities which remain in dormant form, in latent form at the bottom layers of the mental system, which influence our actions and tendencies and attitudes for several life cycles. So that's why the Karmasya is sometimes called Apurvam and Adrishtam. Dharma, dharmo, adrishtam, syad, bhasha, varicheda, I should say. That is a definition here. What it means is, this karmasya, sometimes called chitta bhumu asherade iti asheha. This is a residual effects of the past, that is karmasya, accumulated in the mental system in subliminal form, which will never remain inactive so long as we have not reached the highest spiritual core. So according to Patanjali system, when we practice yoga, when we realize our identity with Purusha, these karmasya, samskaras will be completely obliterated, wiped out. And in Vedanta tradition, because yoga is related to Vedanta, yoga is a springboard to Vedanta. So when you reach that state of total obliteration of karmasya, that state is called in Vedanta chitta vritti or sattva shuddhi, it's called, where chitta becomes completely emptied of all vrittis, both good and bad. That is the te klada paridava phalaha punya punya hedutvad. So these karmasya result, I mean, in happiness or unhappiness for several life cycles. Now we are going to discuss an important subject, that is, what are the obstacles that we frequently have to encounter in our yoga practice. These obstacles are to be understood as relevant not only in the practice of yoga, but also in the practice of any kind of spiritual disciplines. So there is a sutra here, Vyadhi, Dhyana, Samshaya, Pramada, Alasya, Avirati, Bhranti Darshana, Alabdha Bhumigatva, Anavasthitattvani, Chitta Vikshepaha, Te Antarayaha, Iti Ete Nava Vikshepaha. So these are 9 obstacles in spiritual life, psychological problems that people may have to face. Not only psychological, physical, vyadhi can be physical illness or psychological illness. So these 9 obstacles, that is disease, indecision, carelessness, sloth, sensuality, mistaken notion, missing the point. I mean, you practice and you are actually making progress, but you somehow feel that you are not making any progress. That is a common problem many spiritual seekers face. They are making a lot of progress, but they feel this is the most common and universal problem. Other alasya, aladhibhumigat, all these are secondary. But the most common and universal problem is this missing the point, instability. These are the distractions that we face in spiritual life. So those who are interested, they can know the sutra, the 30th sutra, Samadhipada, it is called. Vyadhi, according to Bhoja, so please remember Bhoja Raja Martanda, he was a king and his work is well known. It is called Dhadu Vaishame Nimittatvad, that is, or sometimes Dhadu Vaishame Nimittu Juradi, sometimes. Different kinds of physical illness, different manifestations of physical illness is called Vyadhi, fever, etc. That is one obstacle. And this is often a common problem when a person takes to yoga life. You are actually starting a new life. So there is always a problem, when you start your car with a sudden acceleration, there will be a friction, a movement in the vehicle. So also when a person takes to spiritual life, there will be some friction, because from one state of human mind, one state of our emotions and feelings, you are moving to another state of emotions and feelings. So that will create problems for the mind and also for the body. It's called Vyadhi. Then Dhyana is a state of mental impasse caused by repressed conflicts. Dhyana means. There are many desires, many aspirations stored up in the mental system, but we know that they are really problems for spiritual life. So these Nava Antaraya should be understood as relevant for every spiritual seeker, not only related to yoga itself. So Dhyana is called a mental impasse caused by repressed conflicts. That also is linked to Karmasya, because Karmasya, not only Karmasya, but also Klesha Samskaras. Klesha Samskaras are samskaras which are more superficial, which are linked to our experiences in this life, which may express which may manifest in this life itself. But karmasya samskaras are samskaras lying at the deeper layers of the mental system, which go on influencing our life cycles for several generations. So that also can cause in the form of what you call dhyana, which is repressed impressions and the conflicts they create. Samshaya is again a kind of doubt, irrational doubt, that is, it almost borders on the abnormal. So healthy doubt is okay, but when health doubt becomes almost some kind of an obsession, cynicism, or strongly deep-rooted negativity, and when we are also aware that they are totally irrational, the problem becomes more serious. So these are some of the problems that Patanjali brings out. Now there is a reason why Patanjali brings out these problems. In yoga, as in modern psychology, very often when you are aware of a problem, the problem loses some of its severity. When you are aware there is a problem ahead on your path, then you can manage the problem. Just like when you're driving, when you know there is a 1 hour delay ahead, 10 miles away, there is a chance and possibility for 1 hour delay, then what happens? You'll be ready for it. So that reduces the intensity of the conflict or stress that you may have to encounter. So that's one of the reasons why Patanjali is giving a hint at the 9 obstacles that people may have to face when they take to spiritual life in general. So there is samshaya. Then pramada is carelessness, inability to focus on something. You become habitually careless without being able to pay full attention to anything, without the ability to take it seriously that it deserves. So that problem is called the pramada, and alasyam is dullness or heaviness. Gurutvam is often a word used to explain that, alasyam. You feel a lack of enthusiasm, not only physical, but also mental and spiritual dullness, heaviness, and a tendency to procrastinate, to postpone without any justification, or giving false justifications for postponing, because we are not willing, we don't have the enthusiasm to undertake that spiritual journey. It's called alasyam. It is a peculiar quality related to tamoguna. Avirati means inability to give up pleasure seeking. That is natural tendency of the senses and mind to go out in search of sensual pleasures. Our inability to restrain the senses. That is called avirati. Though we strongly want to restrain the senses, still we are not able to do that. This again is related to the conflict between what we want to do and what our senses and mind permit us to do. So yesterday I mentioned this, the pendulum of a clock, called Vikshiptam Manah, it is called. The 5 states of human mind based on mental conditions and vritti, that is Kshiptam, Modham, Vikshiptam, which is very common to all spiritual seekers. A sudden enthusiasm, and then the enthusiasm is gone, a sudden dullness. It's called. Then Bhranti Darshana means the false experience of following wrong paths. It is, in modern times, we can say Bhranti Darshana, as indicated by Patanjali and expounded and commented by other writers like Tattva Vaisharati or Yoga Bhashya Vartikam, etc. You can say Bhranti Darshana can be any manifestation of either optical illusion or delusional problems, delusions of grandeur that frequently comes to certain spiritual seekers at the beginning of their life. Suddenly you feel you have reached an elevated state of spiritual life. So especially those who live in isolated places and trying to practice pranayama, and suddenly these sort of things become delusions of grandeur can come. And that, of course, will at some stage or other can give place to delusions of persecution and other problems. So Bhranti Darshana can be some kind of a hallucination or some kind of a delusions. So all these are problems which every spiritual seeker should be aware of potentially, especially those who take yoga very seriously. Should be aware of. And some commentators emphasize that all these 9 antarayas can be avoided if a person gets direct instruction from an experienced master and follow the vital principle, that is, everything should be undertaken only after every serious spiritual practices like pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana should be undertaken only after getting fully established yamas and niyamas. So yamas and niyamas are emphasized. If a person gets himself well disciplined in ahimsa, satya, steya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, then shauja, sandosha, tapaswadhyaya, isapradhana. Yamas are universal. Sarvabhauma, it is a universal application. And a person who is fully established in yamas, niyamas will become automatic, more or less. So, if a person gets fully established in yamas and niyamas disciplines, before undertaking further steps, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, etc., then all these antarayas can be avoided. Of course, one needs the instruction of a trained teacher. Of course, there are a few other also dukkha, daurmanasya, angamejayatva, shwasa praswasa, vikshepa, sahaketugaha. These are not very, very important. Distractions are mentioned here. Certain distractions and vikshepas are mentioned here. 4 external manifestations of psychological or psychological obstacles are mentioned here. Dukkha, daurmanasya, etc. That is pain, despair, shakiness, and inspiration and expiration. Dukkha is again sorrow, and then Angamejayata, according to Vyasa's yad angani ejayati kampayati va. I mean, which you feel your organs are shaking, unsteadiness of the body, etc. Shwasa prashwasa, I mean irregular breathing. So all these are very important, People who practice intense pranayama without the instructions from a teacher, and of course yamas and niyamas, may end up developing asthmatic problems, and also sometimes delusions and even manic excitement. All these problems are natural. So that's why these 9 antarayas are mentioned and 4 chitta vikshepas are mentioned here. Tatpadishedhartham ekatattva, that is a sutra here, that is 31. Tatpadishedhartham, I mean, to counteract these 9 antarayas and the 4 distractions, vikshepas, a remedial measure is recommended here, that is meditation, ekatattva abhyasa, meditation on a single principle. But that again, of course, Patanjali or Vyasa or Vajaspati or Bhoja, they or Shivan Shankara and his Vivarana, they do not insist at every stage the importance of yamas and niyamas. But in modern times, it is important to emphasize that point. That's why I'm repeating again and again this particular aspects. It is in this context that Patanjali recommends a way to a method of interaction with the outer world, how a spiritual teacher should interact with the outer world, and how to interact with people of different temperaments. So they say Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upekshanam, Sukadukha, Punya, Punya Vishayanam, Bhavanadas, Chitta Prasadanam. So the mind attains Chitta Shuddhi, or Chitta Shuddhi with Chitta Prasada. Of course, Chitta Shuddhi comes as a result of Chitta Prasada. Comes later, of course. So what happens, what Patanjali says is, the Chitta Prasadam, the tranquility of mind, is attained by cultivating certain qualities, which I already elaborated yesterday, so I won't go into those details, by friendliness, compassion, admiration, indifference towards happy, sorrowful situations, respectively, and virtue and vice. This we already discussed yesterday, so I won't repeat again, but just a few important points. One is Maitri. So, friendship with the like-minded people. Good food for the mind, good samskaras to the mind. That is the most important thing for every yoga practitioner, every spiritual seeker who is practicing yoga. So how to make your mind, how to turn your mind into a friendly companion and not a hostile enemy. Because if we do not feed our mind with good food, then mind will not cooperate. And when mind doesn't cooperate, then all the chitta vikshebas and antarayas, that is 4 distractions and the 9 obstacles, are inevitable. So, how to avoid a situation where some of these distractions can emerge? For that, Patanjali recommends Maitri. As much as possible, we should try to associate with people whose company, whose association and conversations with whom will help us to emphasize, to reinforce our own spiritual convictions. So fellow pilgrims, fellow spiritual travelers, fellow spiritual seekers, interact with them. They are a great source of good spiritual food. Maitri Karuna. Then there are those who are not so spiritually endowed. We should have a sense of sympathy, if not contempt. If we look down upon somebody who is spiritually not as advanced as ourselves, that also can create wrong samskaras, a wrong vritti, and that can create a dark line in our mental system. Mudita means an appreciation, admiration, respect for those who are more advanced than ourselves. Because when we respect a good quality in another person, then we will inherit a bit of that good quality. That's important. So one of the best ways to generate good spiritual food for the mind is go on appreciating, have a free mind, admire people who are more advanced than you, should not be jealous, should not have any envy, but should appreciate and admire those who are spiritually more advanced than ourselves. Upeksha, again, indifference, keeping a long distance. Not physically, it may not be possible to physically keep a long distance from people with negative opinions, whose association can be problematic, We may not be able to keep a distance physically, but we'll be able to develop a filtering mechanism within our own mind, which helps us to filter out all wrong vrittis emanating from wrong associations. So that is a very, very important recommendation that Patanjali gives. There's a very famous sutra that comes in the Kaivalyapada. So I don't have time to deal with every single sutra, but some important sutras I want to emphasize. That is, the sutra is Nimittam aprayojagam prakritinam varana bhedastu tata kshetrigavad. The sutra says, causes do not put the nature into motion. Only the removal of obstacles. That means take place through them. So your yoga practice or meditation, it only helps you to remove the obstacles that stand in your way of realizing the goal. I shall try to explain this. It's like a farmer. So kshetrigavad, here is an udaharana, a drishtanta given here. The central point is samskaras or effects only act as agents in removing obstacles in the path of our evolutionary nature. So what it means is, the example is, it's like a farmer who breaks down the barrier to let the water flow. I mean, the hindrance is being removed. But the example Kshetriga was mentioned. Suppose you have got a field which you want to irrigate and you want to bring water, and there's a lake or a river nearby or a stream. So you want to construct a canal connecting the field that you want to irrigate with the river from where the water should flow towards the field. So what you do in effect is, when you cut the canal, you remove that part of the mud. And when you remove that, then the obstacle that stands in the way of water flowing from the river to the field is removed. Or to give an example, suppose you had a granite block and you want to chisel, you want to construct a statue of Buddha. What do you do if you're a sculptor? You chisel out certain parts of the granite block, and then the Buddha image comes out. So it is the same granite. You only chiseled out, removed certain parts of the granite block. And when you remove them, Buddha comes out. Buddha is already present in the granite block. But if you are an expert sculptor, an artist in that area, then you can construct a beautiful image or a statue of Buddha by chiseling out certain parts from the granite block. So that's an example given here. So what do you do through spiritual practices? You completely remove, eradicate, and you obliterate all the obstacles that stand in your way of realizing your own true nature. Because our true nature is what we belong to and is what belongs to us. By removing all these obstacles, what happens is we just get rid of the obstacles, the unnecessary parts. And for that, there is a mantra, there is an important discipline mentioned here. Tajjabastad-artha-bhavanam. Tajjabastad-artha-bhavanam. Artha-bhavanam means you meditate reverentially, you think of the meaning of this. So it is a description on how to repeat a mantra and meditate, which is part of the Ekatattva Abhyasa, the practice of concentration. So three types of jabas are indicated in the commentaries. That is Vachikam, Upamshu, and Manasikam. Vachikam means verbal. Upamshu means only lips moving, but you don't hear it loud, but lips are moving. And Manasika means subtle, mental, inherent japa. So japa, certain pranavas or any other mantras can be practiced to develop ekatattva abhyasa, extreme concentration, which will obliterate all these obstacles and antarayas. In the mantra shastra, of course, there are certain stages, different stages mentioned in our evolution. Para, Pashaddhi, Madhyama, Vaikhari. When a person begins his mantra japa practice, he may do it very loudly. He hears it. Because when he hears his own sound coming, it also will have a positive effect. It's called Vaikhari. But it is the grossest and the lowest in that evolution of mantra shastra practice. That is, when you do loudly, so loud singing hymns, bhajans, roughly correspond to the Vaikhari. And a person who utters a mantra very loudly, so that those mantras will create a strong vibration around, and he will be benefited by that vibration, and he also hears that vibration. So on the one hand he is chanting, on the other hand he is hearing his own chanting. This is the stepping stone into mantra practice. The next stage is Madhyama. As you evolve further, it becomes less physical, less gross, and more subtle. And then as you advance further, it becomes Pashyanti. As in ascending order, from Vaikhari, Madhyama, then Pashyanti. And eventually when you reach Para stage, it is the highest reach of mantra japa practice, where you become one, completely absorbed in the essence, the implication of the mantra. So this is the method prescribed here. Patanjali insists on one important aspect. So in one of the sutras, Dirghakala Nairandarya Satkara Asevido Dridhabhumi. So spiritual practices, whether it is pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, all should be practiced with a great sense of reverence, sanctity, and sacredness, which altogether can be called Shraddha. That's why it is called, Satkara Asevita. So you should approach spiritual practice with a degree of great reverence, great respect, great sanctity, great integrity, and honesty. And you should be able to practice for a long time, Dirghakala, and you should be able to practice in unbroken succession, continuously, without a break. So Dirghakala means long, one should be able to practice long. That's why Sthira Sukham Asanam, the sitting posture, should have Sthiryam and also Saukhyam. Sthiryam alone will not do. You may sit for a long time, but you feel great strain. So it should be Sukham also, Saukhyam. You should have a pleasant, blissful feeling while practicing asana. And asanas are only meant to enable us to sit in the same and correct posture for a long time with a great reverence and without a break. That is why Dirghakala Nairantarya Sarkar Asevito Didaptunda Bhumi. The sanctity and sacredness is mentioned here. So that's Patanjali's commentaries, not Patanjali's commentary, but commentaries on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. The modern commentaries also, especially Vivekananda, who was the first great Indian teacher who translated and expounded Yoga Sutras in English language and made it so well known even before other great Indian teachers started propagating yoga. So, of course, great spiritual teachers like Vivekananda used to insist on the importance of dynamism, energy, and enthusiasm, and all these qualities. So, that if one should be able to practice for a long time, one should be able to practice with unbroken succession, and one should be able to practice with a great sense of sanctity and sacredness. There's an ancient sloka, Agachan pipiligo yadi yojananam shatanyapi, Agachan vainateyopi padamegam nagachati. So, two examples are given, very interesting, you know. Gachan pipiligo yadi yojananam shatanyapi. See, an ant, it moves very slowly, but it's always moving. It has got Dirghakala Nairantarya. It goes on moving for a long time. So, for a long time, continuously, without a break. So, Gachan Pipiligo Yadi Yojananam Shatanyapi. It travels hundreds of yojanas. It travels long distances. An ant which can move only very slowly, and it can cover a very, very, very short distance, even in a very long time. Still, Dirghakala, it goes on moving, and it continuously moves with the great steadiness of Dirghakala Nairantarya Sarkara Asevito. Then the negative example is given. Agachan Vainateyopi Padamekam Nagachati. Vainateya Garuda. It's a powerful bird, the mystical bird. If it remains the agachan without moving anywhere, without going anywhere, it moves. If it moves, it can move very fast and for long distances. But it doesn't move at all. It remains there without moving an inch, because agachan, it doesn't go anywhere. It remains rooted in one place without moving. But what happens, you know, Patamegam Nagachati is not able to move 1 inch, though it can travel long distances in very short time. Because it doesn't move at all, it remains rooted in one place without making any progress. On the other hand, Pipilika, the ant, which can move only very, very slowly, but is steady, steadfast, and never stops till he reaches goal. So that's why, you know, Yojananam Shatanyapi Gachati, he travels hundreds of yojanas, long distances. So very interesting word. So anyway, I have tried to give a brief introduction, a bird view of Patanjali's analysis of human mind. It's a very unique work. So one should take years to study Patanjali Yoga Sutras with the commentaries of Vyasa and other introductory books like Shankaracharya's Vivarana, which is based on Vyasa Bhashya, and then Yoga Bhashiga, Yoga Bhashya Vartigam, and also Tattva Vaishayati. So these are all very important books. It is a lifelong work for one to master this great spiritual work. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, Swamiji. It was again a very enlightening lecture, a lot of food for thought. Viewers, if you have any questions, please put them in question and answer, and Swamiji will briefly answer it now. Swamiji, I have one question. In the beginning, you spoke about two kinds of samskaras, two different karmasya, and I think the second one was kleshta samskaras. Klishta samskaras, if I am not wrong. Can you please briefly give differences between them? I mean, how, what they
Yes.
are different? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, Pancha Kleshas, Avidya, Asmita, Raga, Desha, Abhinivesha, they constitute the root cause of all samskaras. Now, some of the samskaras uh, are relatively superficial and they influence our life and activities only in the present life. So they are technically called klesha samskaras, though the karmasya samskaras also are related to klesha, pancha klesha. Still, they are called klesha samskaras. Then there are certain samskaras which do not operate in the present life. They remain rooted, they remain at the very bottom layers of the mental system. And I gave the example, a child who shows prodigious skills in music or art or certain areas of learning, though there is no trace of that influence in his family as a maternal tradition or paternal tradition, and the child never read a book, never had an occasion to listen to music, still you find many examples, not only in music, but many other areas you find. So how do you explain this? If you go by genetics or if you go by any kind of associations, if you ask a modern psychiatrist, psychologist, he may try to say he may have read a book or he may listen to music when he was small, but there are many examples where there is absolutely no trace of any kind of such influences. So from every effect should have a cause. It's a pure science. So this is an example of karmasya samskaras operating. Many of the karmasya samskaras are coming from distant life cycles. There may be long intervals during which many of the skills did not manifest, and suddenly it comes. So strong samskaras, very strong samskaras will manifest immediately through random association. So I can give the example of Paul Brunton. Of course, the most obvious example which everyone knows about is Ramana Maharshi. He was such an advanced soul. So even into the death of his father made him think, and that was enough for him to connect with the deathlessness of Atman. And that's that who started spiritual journey. So sudden occasional connection with something mysterious is a strong indication of karmasya samskaras coming from distant life cycles.
Swamiji, Yoga Sutra speaks about various siddhis like anima, garima, and these occult powers. So, how should we understand this?
It comes in Vibhudipada. Yoga, but a real yoga practitioner will ignore those things. And people who normally fall prey to these temptations of Vibhudis, they eventually come to grief. But there are certain great souls who have ignored them and who reached Kaivalya. They, in their case, they can, for the good of others, not for hurting others or for acquiring wealth or anything, for the good of others, they may use these powers. So two examples are there. Those who fall by the wayside, because once they get a little very glimpse of a very minuscule part of these vibhutis, powers, psychic powers, they immediately I mean their path is blocked once for all because they get trapped into it. Then they have to have delay several life cycles to come back to yoga again because the temptations to some of these powers may wash away, may neutralize the good samskaras they already generated during the early part of the practice. So that happens. Negative samskaras can neutralize the effect. See, samskaras cannot be destroyed, but samskaras can be neutralized by an overwhelming amount of negative samskaras. Good samskaras can become uh, ineffective, can become ineffective, non-functional if there is a huge amount of negative samskaras. That's the, so, and vice versa. So that happens. So there is one stage where the samskaras become non-functional by spiritual practice, ekadattva abhyasa and all that. That's called dagdha. So dagdha means like seeds which are burned. See, if you have got seeds, vegetable seeds, you can eat it. Or you put in soil, it can sprout and can become a plant and a tree. But suppose you fry it and it put on soil, they don't sprout. So like that, samskaras can be called dagdha samskaras. Samskaras can be neutralized through spiritual practices. That is also possible. So when you reach the highest stage of kaivalya, and then at some stage in samprajnata samadhi and then there's especially nirvikalpa samadhi state, all these samskaras get completely obliterated. They become non-functional. They become important. They cannot do any harm to you.
Swamiji, we have got one question from a viewer who asks, which modern commentary would you recommend apart from Swami Vivekananda on Yoga Sutras?
Yeah, I tell you, I was trained in traditional commentary. So apart from Swamiji, I have not read thoroughly any other English commentaries. But you can read. There are commentary apart from the commentaries of Vyasa or Vachaspati or and Tattva. I mean this Rajamarta, Bhojas Rajamarta and Shankaras Vivarana. Apart from that, Bhasudi Hariharananda Aranyas. He lived at the 19th century. So English translations are available. I think so. English translations are available, and I'm not I'm not familiar with many of the modern Western translations. I'm not familiar, so I mostly deal with the traditional commentaries. And of course, Swamiji. So I give importance to Swamiji's commentary because in Swamiji's commentary there are certain insights which you don't get directly in the traditional commentaries. That's because traditional commentators form a part of a continued succession of teachers in the yoga tradition. So Swami Vivekananda lived in modern times. So he interprets and expounds yoga to the modern audience, rational audience. So he can speak in the language of common sense life situations. So there are many other translations you can find.
Thank you, Swamiji. With this, we come to the conclusion of this weekend with wisdom. Thank you again for agreeing to participate and speak in our event. Viewers, please follow our social media on Twitter and Facebook for updates. We will soon share details about the next week's Weekend with Wisdom. We will be discussing with Sri Arvinda Ravji on Ramayana. So with this, we conclude today's session. Shri Gurubhyo Namah.
Can I ask you one question?
Swamiji, you had something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, do you, many of our devotees all spread all over the Bay Area will be interested, they watch our events. So if they ask me, what should I tell them? This be available in your video?
This particular session?
No, these two sessions will be
Yes,
available.
we will publish it on YouTube channel, and I will share the link with you.
Oh, yeah, many of our we have an extensive group of people contribution. Okay, thank
Yes.
you.
Yes.
Happy
Okay.
to meet.
Thank you, Swamiji. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.